today for the first time. The Senate now voting to end the war in Iran. 4 Republicans joining Democrats. Rachel Scott from the White House.
Tonight, the Senate for the first time voting to end the war in Iran. 4 Republicans joining Democrats to say the war must stop now unless the White House seeks congressional approval. The vote largely symbolic, but a clear sign of lawmakers' growing frustration.
Obviously, it's going differently than originally we were told it was going to go. I agree with the original aims, but it does not seem as if we've accomplished that.
As the Senate was voting, President Trump was in Pennsylvania, touting progress on Iran.
We just achieved a historic peace agreement with Iran to end the conflict in the Strait of Hormuz.
But there was no conflict in the Strait before the president launched the war. And tonight, there is confusion surrounding the crucial nuclear talks. Vice President J.D. Vance says Iran has agreed to allow nuclear inspections, something that was part of the Obama nuclear deal, which Trump scrapped. But Iran's foreign ministry today says there are no new plans to let inspectors into their nuclear sites.
All Wraith guys, Adam is back. So this is happening right now. Trump's national security team accidentally added a journalist to an unclassified group chat discussing classified military plans, while the Senate voted to strip Trump of war powers with 5 Republicans joining Democrats. The convergence of staggering incompetence and bipartisan rebellion is undermining the presidency from both outside and inside. Trump absolutely erupted. Trump went on Truth Social and started attacking the Republicans who voted against him. Trump called them stupid. Trump called them ashamed. Trump said they should never be elected to office again. Trump named them by name. Trump said they were siding with Democrats. Trump said they were betraying the country. Trump was absolutely furious.
And also responding to Senator Murkowski hours after she joined 4 other Republicans voting to limit his war powers in Venezuela, saying she should never be reelected. We've got our political reporter Will Courtney following this in studio now.
Yeah, Augusta, Rebecca, the vote comes after U.S. forces captured Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro last week. The raid killed about 75 people, raising questions about whether Trump needed congressional approval. Murkowski said in a statement, this will allow the Senate to begin debate on this measure following President Trump's statements yesterday, suggesting that the United States could remain in Venezuela for years. And she also added that the president's actions clearly require congressional authorization. In response, President Trump said on Truth Social, Republicans should be ashamed of the senators that just voted with Democrats in attempting to take away our powers to fight and defend the United States of America, and goes on to list Murkowski as a Republican who should never be elected to office again.
But the Senate had just made it clear that Trump can't do whatever he wants anymore. The Senate had just made it clear that there are limits to presidential power. The Senate had just made it clear that even Republicans have lines they won't cross. And at the exact same time, his team was getting exposed for texting war plans to a journalist. At the exact same time, his administration was being revealed as incompetent and reckless with sensitive information. At the exact same time, his people were getting caught handling military secrets like they were texting about dinner plans. So this is the moment where Trump's power is being constrained from the outside by Congress and being revealed as chaotic and dangerous from the inside through his own team's incompetence. This is the moment where everything Trump depends on, military authority and information control, is being challenged and exposed. This is the moment where the system is boxing Trump in and his own people are handing the keys to his critics.
Well, this comes as we're hearing tonight from National Security Advisor Mike Waltz about what he says happened. Fox Station Crowley's here with more on this breach that's sending shockwaves across the nation.
It sure is. President Trump, though, is standing by his national security team and defending National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, downplaying this major security breach. Waltz mistakenly included a journalist from The Atlantic to join a group chat on the messaging app Signal during the conversation with high-ranking intelligence officials about military attacks in Yemen. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and Vice President J.D. Vance among those on this thread. Now, today, President Trump doing damage control, insisting nothing classified was discussed on that chat. However, the reporter on the chat, Atlantic Magazine editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg, says it was a war plan.
Let's start with the war powers vote because it represents a fundamental shift in how Congress relates to Trump. The Senate voted 52-47 to limit Trump's ability to conduct military action without congressional approval. 5 Republican senators voted with the Democrats to do it. Senator Josh Hawley is one of 5 Republican senators who voted in favor of that resolution. If the President and the Department of War should feel the need to put ground troops, boots on the ground into Venezuela in the future, then I think under the Constitution, the Congress would need a vote on that. President Donald Trump took to Truth Social after the vote to blast Republicans who voted with Democrats on the War Powers Act resolution. He called out Missouri Senator Josh Hawley by name along with Senators Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Rand Paul, and Todd Young, saying they should be ashamed and never be elected again.
We're learning more about new tension between Donald Trump and a handful of Senate Republicans who defied him. A source tells MS Now Trump called up all 5 of these Republican senators who voted with Democrats on Thursday to restrict the president from taking further military action in Venezuela. And he berated, quote, more than one of them. Trump also blasted them online, saying they, quote, should never be elected to office again. Still, the final vote on war powers is unlikely to pass the House, and even if it did, Trump would almost certainly veto it. Anthony Coley and Basil Smykel, they are still here at the table with us. Basil, I guess I'll begin with you. Do you think there's a real division here, a sort of crack in the Republican coalition when it comes to this president's foreign activity? I mean, coming out of a campaign where part of the energy and the promise of that campaign was actually to get us out of foreign wars and intervention, to reinvest in, the middle class here at home.
Trump went on Truth Social and started attacking the Republicans who voted against him. Trump called them stupid. Trump called them ashamed. Trump said they should never be elected to office again. Trump named them by name: Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Rand Paul, Josh Hawley, Todd Young. Trump said they were siding with Democrats. Trump said they were betraying the country. Trump was absolutely furious. But the Senate had just made it clear that Trump can't do whatever he wants anymore. The Senate had just made it clear that there are limits to presidential power. The Senate had just made it clear that even Republicans have lines they won't cross. And at the exact same time, his team was getting exposed for texting war plans to a journalist. At the exact same time, his administration was being revealed as incompetent and reckless with sensitive information. At the exact same time, his people were getting caught handling military secrets like they were texting about dinner plans. So this is the moment where Trump's power is being constrained from the outside by Congress and being revealed as chaotic and dangerous from the inside through his own team's incompetence. This is the moment where everything Trump depends on, military authority and information control, is being challenged and exposed. This is the moment where the system is boxing Trump in and his own people are handing the keys to his critics. Okay, so let's start with the war plans leak because it's almost too bizarre to be real. Trump's national security advisor, Mike Waltz, was coordinating war planning for strikes in Yemen. Vice President J.D. Vance was involved. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was involved. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was involved. These are the highest levels of the Trump national security apparatus. These are the people making decisions about military action, and they were texting sensitive war planning details on Signal on an unclassified messaging app with auto-deletion enabled, and they accidentally added Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic to the chat. Think about that for a second. The top 4 officials responsible for national security were casually discussing extremely sensitive operational details about airstrikes. They were talking about targets. They were talking about timing. They were talking about risk assessments. They were having detailed conversations about military action that could kill people and change geopolitics. And they were doing it on a semi-public platform. And they made a mistake and added a journalist. And nobody caught it. Nobody realized a journalist was in the chat. Nobody saw that something had gone wrong. Nobody had the kind of basic security practices in place to notice that an outsider had been added to a conversation about classified military planning. This wasn't a conspiracy. This wasn't an intentional leak. This was just stunning incompetence. This was just the kind of carelessness you'd expect from people texting about what they're having for lunch, not from people discussing military strikes. And then it got worse, because once Goldberg realized what was happening, he contacted the Trump administration to alert them to the breach. He told them he had been added to the chat. He told them war plans had been discussed. And instead of just accepting the mistake and moving on, instead of just thanking Goldberg for pointing it out, the White House started investigating unauthorized leaks. The White House started blaming Goldberg. The White House started acting like the problem was that Goldberg talked about it instead of the problem being that they had accidentally leaked sensitive military plans to a journalist in the first place. And the details that came out were damaging. The war plans that were discussed included extremely sensitive operational information about strikes in Yemen. The plans included details about timing. The plans included details about targets. The plans included risk assessments. The plans included the kind of information that you absolutely do not want your enemies to have. And if those messages had been intercepted by hostile intelligence, if China or Russia or Iran had been able to read those signal messages, they would have had a detailed playbook of what Trump's military was planning. And that's where the bipartisan outrage came from, because Democrats and Republicans both understood that this was a massive failure of basic operational security. Senator Chuck Schumer called it one of the most astonishing violations of military intelligence he had encountered. Republicans said the group had handed their enemies a playbook. Lawmakers from both parties said it was unacceptable that critical operational details were being passed around on phones. Lawmakers from both parties said the White House couldn't be trusted with sensitive information. And that outrage is important because it feeds directly into the War Powers Resolution that the Senate passed, because the Senate was already skeptical of Trump's military judgment. The Senate was already worried about Trump launching strikes without proper authorization. The Senate was already concerned about Trump using military power impulsively. And then this leak happens, and it confirms every concern the Senate had. The Senate sees that Trump's team can't be trusted with war planning. The Senate sees that Trump's administration is reckless with sensitive information. The Senate sees that Trump's national security team is incompetent. So the Senate acts. The Senate votes to limit Trump's war powers. The Senate votes to require congressional authorization for military action in places like Venezuela. The Senate votes 52-47 to constrain Trump's commander-in-chief authority, and 5 Republicans vote with the Democrats. 5 Republicans decide that they're not comfortable letting Trump have unlimited war power given what they've just learned about how his team handles sensitive information. And Trump absolutely loses it. Trump goes on Truth Social and starts attacking the Republicans who voted against him. Trump calls them stupid. Trump says they should be ashamed. Trump says they should never be elected again. Trump is furious that Republicans would dare vote against him on something as important as war powers. Trump is furious that his own party is constraining his authority. Trump is furious that Republicans are siding with Democrats on anything. But the vote shows that Trump's power is eroding, even on issues where he's traditionally had the most authority, even on military issues, even on war powers, even on the things where presidents are supposed to have the most flexibility. Even in those areas, Republicans are willing to vote against Trump. Republicans are willing to constrain his authority. Republicans are willing to say that Trump shouldn't have unlimited power to wage war. All right, so let's think about what this moment means for Trump's power and for the future of checks and balances in the United States government. Because this is one of those rare moments where you see the system actually working. You see Congress actually trying to impose limits on executive power. You see lawmakers actually trying to do their job of providing oversight, and you see it happening specifically because Trump's own team has been exposed as incompetent and reckless. First, let's talk about what the War Powers Resolution actually means. The resolution doesn't completely strip Trump of military authority. The resolution doesn't require him to get permission before defending the country. The resolution is specifically about military action in places like Venezuela, where the threat to the United States is not imminent. The resolution is about Trump's ability to wage war at his discretion without congressional authorization. The resolution is saying that Congress needs to have a role in decisions about military action that aren't strictly defensive in nature. And that's important because it's a check on presidential power. It's saying that Trump can't just decide to bomb Venezuela because he feels like it. It's saying that Trump has to convince Congress that military action is necessary. It's saying that the United States shouldn't be going to war without the people's representatives voting on it. And that's the constitutional structure that the founders intended. That's how the system is supposed to work. But the system hasn't been working that way. Presidents have been expanding their war powers for decades. Presidents have been fighting wars without congressional authorization. Presidents have been using military power without asking Congress for permission. And Trump has been pushing that even further. Trump has been even more aggressive about asserting military authority. Trump has been even more willing to use military force without constraint. So, the Senate vote is a pushback against that trend. The Senate vote is saying we're not going to let this continue anymore. The Senate vote is saying Congress is going to exercise its constitutional authority. And it's significant that Republicans are voting for it. It's significant that Republicans are willing to constrain Trump. It's significant that Republicans are willing to work with Democrats to limit presidential power. Now let's talk about what the Signal leak reveals about Trump's judgment and his administration's competence. Because this leak doesn't just show poor operational security. This leak shows a pattern of recklessness and incompetence that extends throughout the Trump administration. This leak shows that Trump's people don't take security seriously. This leak shows that sensitive military information is being handled carelessly. This leak shows that the people running Trump's national security apparatus don't have basic competence in protecting classified information. And that's damaging in multiple ways. It's damaging to Trump's credibility on security issues. It's damaging to the Trump administration's ability to keep secrets. It's damaging to allied countries' willingness to share intelligence with the United States if they know that sensitive information is going to be texted around on unclassified apps. It's damaging to the overall national security apparatus if people lose confidence that the White House can be trusted with sensitive information. And this is coming at a moment when Trump's team is already under scrutiny for how they handle secrets. You've got the Vance leaked text showing chaos and doubt about Trump's judgment. You've got Epstein emails being released that are raising questions about what Trump knew and when. You've got the Waltz Signal leak showing recklessness with military secrets. You've got a pattern of sensitive information leaking out of the Trump administration or being improperly handled. So, voters and lawmakers are starting to ask questions about whether Trump's team can be trusted with power. Voters and lawmakers are starting to ask questions about whether Trump's administration has basic competence. Voters and lawmakers are starting to ask questions about whether it's safe to let Trump have unchecked war powers given how his team handles sensitive information. And that's where the two stories connect. The Senate vote to limit Trump's war powers is partly a response to the Signal leak. The Senate is saying, we know Trump's team can't be trusted with sensitive information, so we're not going to let Trump have unlimited war powers. The Senate is saying, we've seen how reckless the Trump administration is, so we're going to put some guardrails in place. The Senate is saying, we have concerns about Trump's judgment, so we're going to require congressional approval for military action. And third, let's talk about what this means for the balance of power between the branches of government. Because for a long time, especially since World War II, the executive branch has been accumulating more and more power. The executive branch has been waging wars without congressional authorization. The executive branch has been claiming emergency powers. The executive branch has been expanding its authority at the expense of Congress, and Congress has been allowing it to happen. But the Senate vote suggests that Congress might be starting to reassert itself. Congress might be starting to remember that it has constitutional authority. Congress might be starting to push back against executive overreach. And if that trend continues, if Congress continues to reassert itself, it could reshape the balance of power in American government. And for Trump, that's a problem because Trump depends on having maximum flexibility and maximum power. Trump depends on being able to act quickly without having to ask Congress for permission. Trump depends on being able to claim emergency authority and use it without constraint. And if Congress is starting to limit that, if Congress is starting to require authorization before Trump can wage war, then Trump's power is being constrained. Trump's flexibility is being reduced. Trump's ability to act unilaterally is being limited, and all of this is happening while Trump's grip on his own party is slipping. All of this is happening while Republicans are willing to vote against Trump. All of this is happening while Congress is feeling more confident about standing up to Trump. And all of this is happening at the same time that Trump's team is being exposed as incompetent and reckless with sensitive information. So Trump is being boxed in from multiple directions. Congress is limiting his war powers. His own party is voting against him. His team is being revealed as incompetent. His administration is leaking sensitive information. And his authority and credibility are both being undermined. That's the moment we're in. That's the trajectory Trump is on. That's what the future probably looks like. Trump trying to reassert power and control while the system is constraining him and his own people are making him look incompetent. And think about the optics of all this happening at the same time. Think about Trump going on Truth Social to rage about senators voting against his war powers while his team is being exposed for texting classified war plans to a journalist. Think about Trump trying to assert his authority as commander-in-chief while the world is learning that his national security team can't even be trusted with basic operational security. Think about Trump attacking Republicans for constraining his power while his own people are proving that he shouldn't have unconstrained power. It's a perfect storm of problems for Trump. It's a moment where his weaknesses and vulnerabilities are all being exposed at once. It's a moment where Congress is asserting itself and his party is voting against him and his team is being revealed as incompetent. And Trump's response is to go on social media and rage about it. Trump's response is to attack the senators who voted against him. Trump's response is to try to bully and intimidate Republicans into submission. But that strategy is not working anymore. That strategy worked when Trump had strong party support and when his team wasn't being exposed as incompetent. But now, when his own people are leaking classified information and his team can't be trusted with war planning, bullying Republicans into submission doesn't work. Attacking senators on Truth Social doesn't change the vote. Threatening primary challenges doesn't bring Republicans back into line. Trump is discovering that he can't just rage and intimidate his way out of this problem. And that's important because it shows that Trump's power is real, not just because people fear him, but because circumstances have allowed him to be powerful. When his team is competent, when Congress is divided, when his party is united, when his grip on information is strong, then Trump can be powerful. But when his team is incompetent, when Congress is asserting itself, when his party is fracturing, when his own people are leaking information, then Trump's power collapses. Trump is exposed as someone who depends on those circumstances to be powerful. Trump is not as powerful as he claims when those circumstances change, and the signal leak and the war powers vote both suggest that those circumstances are changing. Congress is getting more assertive. Republicans are getting more willing to vote against Trump. Trump's team is getting exposed as incompetent. And as those circumstances change, as the environment becomes less favorable to Trump, his power is declining, his leverage is declining, his ability to control events is declining. So the question going forward is whether this trend continues or whether Trump can reverse it. Can Trump stabilize his team and prevent more leaks? Can Trump get Congress to back down from limiting his war powers? Can Trump get Republicans to stop voting against him? Can Trump reassert control and regain the authority he's losing? Or is this the beginning of a steady erosion of Trump's power as more and more people discover that they're willing to vote against him and defy him? Based on what we're seeing, based on the pattern of rebellions and leaks and congressional pushback, it looks like the erosion is accelerating. It looks like once people discover they can vote against Trump without being destroyed, more people are willing to do it. It looks like once Congress sees that it can assert its authority without the sky falling, Congress is more confident about doing it. It looks like once the public sees that Trump's team is incompetent, people are less likely to trust Trump's judgment. So the war powers vote and the signal leak are not small things. They're signs of a fundamental shift in how people relate to Trump. They're signs that Trump's power is eroding. They're signs that the checks and balances are starting to work. They're signs that the system is beginning to constrain Trump's authority. And if that trend continues, if more people discover they're willing to vote against Trump, if Congress continues to assert its authority, if more leaks expose the incompetence of Trump's team, then we're going to see a president whose power is declining. A president who is increasingly boxed in. A president who is discovering that fear and intimidation are not enough to keep people in line. And that's the story that matters. Not the individual votes, not the individual leaks, but the pattern of Trump's power declining as the system reasserts itself and his team's incompetence is exposed. That's what's going to reshape American politics in the months and years ahead. And understand what the Senate War Powers vote means in the bigger context, because for decades presidents have been accumulating power and Congress has been letting them. Presidents have been fighting wars without congressional authorization. Presidents have been claiming emergency powers. Presidents have been expanding their authority. And Congress has been too divided or too weak or too disorganized to push back. But now Congress is pushing back. Now Congress is saying no. Now Congress is reasserting its constitutional authority. And that matters, because the Constitution gives Congress the power to declare war. The Constitution gives Congress the power to control the military. The Constitution gives Congress the authority to say whether the United States goes to war or not. But that authority has been eroded over time. Presidents have been exercising war powers that the Constitution gives to Congress, and Congress has been allowing it. So when the Senate votes to limit Trump's war powers, when the Senate requires congressional authorization for military action, when the Senate says that Trump can't just decide to wage war without asking Congress, the Senate is reclaiming constitutional authority. The Senate is saying we're going to exercise the power that the Constitution gives us. The Senate is saying we're not going to let the president have unlimited war powers anymore. The Senate is saying we're going to have a say in whether the country goes to war. The signal leak where Trump's team accidentally added a journalist to a classified military chat has provided Congress with the justification to reassert war powers, with 5 Republicans joining Democrats to limit Trump's authority. The trend suggests Congress is pushing back against unchecked executive power, undermining Trump's ability to act without legislative constraints.